Yeah, so the focus of this interest group is consortium. So that can really apply not just to a large consortium where you have a lot of different libraries that are all kind of under the same banner, but even if you're multi-branch, you face a lot of the same type of issues. So, little background: we had been running some meetings. We haven't done it probably about 8 months, but we weren't getting a whole lot of attendance. There's a couple people. Jason was a regular attendee. Michael was there a few times, but for whatever reason, we weren't getting a lot of attendance. So this is a good opportunity to see if there's interest in in having these meetings return. At the time, we were doing them every other month. George did show up at one meeting. That is correct. And then we can spend the rest of the time also talking about particular challenges you're facing, stuff that's coming in the 2011 update that might be of impact to Consortia, that type of stuff. So I guess probably a good place to start would be just to hear if there are people who have questions or issues that are concerning them that come up in that multi-branch type setup. Also, if there's interest in having these discussions on a regular basis, kind of what people would like to see. Or I can go straight and just highlight a few bugs that I pulled out that I think are relevant.
I have two consortium cataloging
problems.
Perfect. The first one, and I feel like it's a setting that I just don't know about. When you're searching in the staff interface or the OPAC, in the OPAC, if you're not logged in, is there a way? Actually, the OPAC, you'd have to be logged in. Sorry, answer that question. In the staff interface, is there a way for when I'm searching for a title that my library search results are first?
I actually do have an answer to that. There's not a great way currently. I think I had filed a bug on that, and I don't know what the bug is off the top of my head. But we did some jQuery, and there's a bit of a workaround. Let me get a search up, and I'll share my screen and kind of show you what we did. This is something that Bywater assisted with because we were having some issues with that. So let me share my screen. Okay. So if we're doing a search for something, I'm going to switch my branch to a different library just because do this one. Because there's like nothing in my library. So if we do a branch, we've added some jQuery. So on the right-hand side, you can see that there's some stuff that tells you if there's no copies available, or if we eventually run into one, we'll see that. On the left-hand side, you see our list of home libraries. Now, this is set up through Elasticsearch, so I don't know how it would look if you're not using Elasticsearch, but these filters, now right now, this ranks with who has the most copies. So all these are ranking. So, but if I click show more, then we've got it. Then it'll show the whole list. And then the jQuery kicks in that will show that the library I'm logged in as will come to the top. I can click the button, and then it will limit to my library. So now we have a list, and we went down quite a bit, filtering our results. So that's sort of how we've done that. I don't know if you're a Bywater customer or not, but I'd be certainly happy to share the jQuery that we use. But yeah, it does. This is designed around Elasticsearch.
Well, and I know we're on Zebra. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't remember the name of the talk, but somebody did where the facets on the side were all collapsible and expandable. And it was great and it was wonderful. I'm like, oh, I got to do that. I got to do that. And you gave code for that. Is there a little like extra line that I could add to the code to say, move the library logged in to the top of the list?
There's probably a way to do that. It also, the other factor is that you have to be able to see it on the facets, and that's where, you know, how many facets you're showing and things like that are relevant. Because if it doesn't pop up on the page, then the jQuery doesn't highlight it like that. So you need to get it showing first, then you can get that happening. Now, that being said, I think ultimately there's probably a better way to do this where there's just a button on the screen that you can click to limit to home library. That feels like that would be doable. And that would definitely be a development that I know we would be interested in pursuing, because even though we're happy to have what we have, it's still a little not as intuitive, not as nice as there being something more obvious to just click on and do that limitation.
I think it wouldn't be too hard using jQuery to make sure that there's under the home library facet that there's always a facet for the library that you're logged in at by getting the code from the logged in page and putting a link there that's all so that you'll always see that link for a home library for your library. One of the things that I saw on Bob's screen, though, let me share mine real quick that I don't know if you noticed, but there is this stuff on the side here where if there aren't any copies locally, that stuff is hidden. Do you have that code on your system? Or do you see something that always looks like this?
I think it always looks like that.
Yeah, there is some code. This is code that I watched what Christopher, Brannon, and Heather Braun and Nick Clemens worked on this code at the first Koha conference. And it's jQuery that, the dogs isn't a really good one, but if we do, like a Harry Potter search, so I'm logged in right now as Leavenworth Public Library. And sometimes, if you show all copies, some of these can be like, here's Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. That takes up that much space on the page. But if we're just showing the local copies, it's only going to show you all of the ones from the other libraries are hidden. So that might make it a little easier for the staff at your various libraries until there is a better way of doing it, to help them, make it easier to sort, what do we have and what's local and what's not local.
This is a deep cut jQuery customization. It is in the jQuery library. It was developed in 3.14. So you might not get expected results copying that straight out of the jQuery library, but you can at least see how it's done there.
Yeah, it's something I've got working on my system. I don't know that I've ever had to update it, but it's certainly something that it wouldn't hurt if maybe one of us that's using it went back and reviewed the code and make sure that the code that's on the wiki will actually still work in a current version.
Yeah, it seems like I had to change some styling. Sorry, go ahead, Christopher.
Oh, sorry. I remember having to update that once during one upgrade, but I can't remember if the library got updated or not.
I have to say that we're still using Zebra at our library, and one of our libraries has just got it set using magic jQuery that someone else made, so that when they put in a search, their items always hit top of the list. They have that done. And Bywater set that up for us, so if that's any help to anybody. it can be done. And on the OPAC side of things, we have it so it's highlighted yellow if your library actually owns it, so that the patrons get a better clue about whether or not you actually have a copy.
Yeah, the one idea I have about once a year that then I realize why it's a terrible idea is I keep on thinking if we were to select the branch you're logged in on the advanced search, then that would work, but then you would always be just searching your items. And then I remember that halfway through, like starting on that project to get that in, and I go, oh yeah, that's going to be a problem, because most of the time we want to look at not just the home library's items, but everything. So better to start with a broader search and filter down.
We're kind of the same way, because we're all about sharing. We want to make sure that you're seeing all the results, but I could see benefit to having like a secondary button out to the right, you know, like search everyone or search my library.
We do have we set it so that the first search you always do is for your home library. And then you have the option of going to all libraries after that. We have a horrible catalogue with so many duplicate records that patrons often miss their own home library item. And so by doing it that way, they'll get their item before they get another library.
There's a consortium problem for the list, duplicate records.
That was my second question. Is there an easy way, like using Mark Edit or Koha itself, on how to?
We actually funded a plugin for duplicate records, and you can actually pull up, using the plugin, you pull up a list of the records, and you can just click on the record you want it all merged into. And at the end of it, you say, go ahead and merge them. And it will do a whole bunch of stuff. But because some of the records are so poor, you really don't want them merging. And but it's an awfully good way of highlighting all the records that are possibly capable of being merged.
Yeah, I could say I've done a bunch of different processes, either manual or automated, and there's never anything that's easy because it always depends on the quality of the records. And the more automated you get, the more you're going to make mistakes where all of a sudden you see stuff merged that shouldn't be merged and things like that. So it's always kind of trying to figure out how safe you can be to get a bunch done, and then going through and fixing those other ones. It's a great thing if you ever have like an intern. That's a great project. Something like that doesn't require a lot of training, but gives them some good hands-on cataloging experience. We've done that before. We don't have a lot of our libraries where I'm super comfortable with them making merges, but we do have them reporting them back to us. So then we can then review and make that determination if it's a good merge. And then with the merge tool, having the ability to kind of more blend those records instead of just pick like one record and have one go to the other is really helpful. But it does take a little bit more of a skill and some analysis to it to do it that way, but you end up with a better result. For our consortium, our issue is less to do, although it happens with bad cataloging that's newly happening. It's whenever we migrate somebody in the system, it's always creates a brand new mess of records that didn't match for whatever reason.
Yeah.
We did a deduplication before I started working here, which was also before we were Bywater customers, and they probably wouldn't have let us do it. But I would not recommend just trying to do a full system dedupe on like ISBN, because that didn't work. I mean, it worked. We're still cleaning it up to this day. So I would err on the side of caution and do things in small batches if you're going to dedupe things.
Yeah, put a system preference in the chat just as a reminder. there is a system preference just for the OPAC for separating the holdings. So you can, if you're logged in, that's the one caveat. If you're logged in, it will separate holdings from one branch and the rest of the branches on different tabs. It would be nice down the road if this feature incorporated IP addresses that could help parse this out so you didn't have to be logged in for it to work. But right now it only works if you're logged in.
Back on the topic of deduplication, I want to point out that report. Nick has gone through, this is an old one too, but he built in like a fast merge link into that report, which we've used for a while. It's not totally accurate. You can never get totally accurate on on reports, but he's normalized out the ISBN to try and identify possible duplicates. And then if you click that fast merge link in the report, it'll take you straight to the merging tool, which kind of speeds up the process, because when you're merging records, usually you have to put them on a list and then get them together and then check them and merge them. And it's a clunky process for sure.
The best way to fix the problem is to make sure that you have catalogers that never make a mistake.
And so how many Heathers are out there in the world?
Not enough.
But with the cataloging SIG, we can all be more perfect catalogers.
We tried to come up with a bunch of standards for cataloging for our consortium, and still the catalogers do what they want to do, you know. Catalogers are always right.
And it's easy. That's what my head cataloger is always complaining about. She's like, it's cataloging so easy. I go out and train them. They know what they're doing. It's not a problem. And then when she gets back and runs the reports, they didn't listen to her at all. So I would say cataloging just in general is also on this list of consortium problems for us, at least.
Yeah, we're actually, earlier this morning, I was putting together a presentation we've been doing once a week, like short 20 to 30 minute webinars on various aspects of cataloging and our ongoing effort to provide training. And, you know, I think what we've done is we've really just tried to simplify things as much as possible so that we're not actually trying to train people to be like fully knowledgeable catalogers. Just get the copy cataloging down, and then when that doesn't apply, then we can provide some additional help, some additional resources, that type of thing. And I do think we do see less problems with newly cataloged stuff than we do when we inherit bad cataloging from a library that's been independent. That is usually where we see the most problems.
I think my biggest problem is they'll go out to the Z3950 targets and they just click the first one. They won't evaluate the record at all. So maybe I just need to scramble that table every time. Like, so they're at least picking something at random. I don't know.
Well, we
actually,
I
think what our catalogers do is they go out and they look at each record and then they pick the worst one.
That's way worse.
So one thing we just did to hopefully discourage adding duplicate records is we've actually put our database back into the Z3950. So you will see if we have a title in there, it will pop up in the search. And so that will hopefully indicate that maybe you've skipped a few steps and you need to go back and just find the record in the system and not actually import anything since it's already there.
That's actually a great idea.
Yes.
That is a spectacular idea.
So basically updating your OCLC holdings would solve that problem. sort of, maybe.
Yeah, we don't share our holdings with those CLCs, so we're not a WorldCat.
I have no comment on that situation.
Any other issues that people are running into? I know that for us, holds are always, resource sharing is always the most complicated scenario and hardest to explain, hardest to manage. So anything like that or anything in particular?
Yes, that's an ongoing problem with us as well. We started off live, we used the transport cost matrix, and then we went to the static queue holds, and they were ordered. And now we've gone to randomizing that. We've only just started that this month, so we're hoping that that solves some of the problem of the biggest library getting all the holds and the smallest libraries getting no holds.
Yeah, we've always done random. That works for us because we don't have like a significantly larger library at our consortium that is kind of like the 800-pound gorilla type thing. So, but that's always worked. At least it seems it's pretty fair. If everything's random, we've never used the cost matrix. We probably could because it's a big state in Colorado where I'm at, and there are some regional differences with Courier where we probably could make some things a little bit more efficient, but just haven't gone that route. And then the other thing that we've struggled with is enforcing reciprocity of holds, because in our consortium, everybody gets to have their own fun, unique rules. So some libraries don't want to lend some things that like DVDs and things like that are really popular. So we have to make sure that those don't get, that the patrons of the libraries that aren't lending those aren't requesting all those as well. And so we have a very complicated branch transfer limits matrix going right now that that is a real pain, particularly for our schools when it's time to turn on and off a school. There's a lot of it's not just like a button you press. There's a lot of stuff to do. So those are all things that are working, but those are some of the challenges we're facing.
Yeah, closing a school isn't pressing a button. It's pressing like 50 buttons per school. What I was going to say is that we have been doing randomized holds queue for a long time, and we have the queue gets randomized every hour. And that way, what we found here quite a few years ago, the way that they were managing libraries getting hit harder with requests than others is they would run a report at the end of each month that said this is the ratio of net borrowers to net lenders, and then they would turn that list upside down and program those in so that the next month the people that shared the least would be the ones that would be at the top of the holds queue. But the issue with that is, number one, it's a lot of work to do that monthly. And number two is that the reason those libraries that weren't sharing as much generally was because they didn't have anything. And so putting them at the top of the queue didn't really help the situation any. And currently we're not using the transportation cost matrix. I can't speak right now. The transportation cost matrix, we're not using it because we have a similar situation with that, where it's all the big libraries would be hit harder by the transportation cost matrix because, where we are, we've got all of the population in one corner of our consortium. And then from there, in every direction, radiating out, it's less and less populous. So the libraries that have the easiest time sharing, where the cost would be lowest, to share things among each other are the ones that are already getting hit the hardest. So rather than making it easier on those libraries that are already sharing a lot, it would just mean that they would be sharing more to use the cost matrix. So we found that the randomization is the most fair way that we've come up with in our geographic situation to make it fair for the libraries.
Our consortium's a little bit different in that, you know, the bigger libraries are operating more often and can fill holds, and we want to share those things out. But several years back, I did a presentation on the transport cost matrix over in the conference over in Pennsylvania. And I don't know if this information is still online, and I can always dig up the information, but we set up our transport cost matrix, and we haven't touched it for years. Everybody's been happy with how it works, but I had shared a spreadsheet that I had come up with that basically we factor the cost of the transport on more than just distance. You know, distance is one of the factors of, you know, where, you know, who should be hit up for that item. We also factor in, you know, how frequently courier runs at different locations, because we'll have libraries that are open 2 days a week. And it doesn't make sense, you know, if they're a closer library, it doesn't make sense to hit them up if they're only open 2 days a week. So that knocks them down in the transport cost calculation. And another one is, you know, if you know, we've got multiple couriers, we've got a main courier that goes out to most of our branches, but within some of those outlying branches, they have a sub courier. And if they go through a sub courier, then that knocks them down the list even more. You know, so we figure out all these things in our spreadsheet. You know, we put in the distances and whether or not there's another courier, you know, how far out are they from the you know, the main courier, and how frequently they're open. All those things factor in and give us some unique numbers that we plug into the cost matrix. And ever since we did that formula, everybody's been quite happy with the distribution.
And I'll just say that we're also a transport cost matrix consortium. And I did use Christopher's spreadsheet to get that set up initially. And we're doing sort of the same thing. I can show you what it looks like, what our spreadsheet looks like. I've got that pulled up over here. Ours is like very basic. You can see there's lots of, it caps out at 4. 0 is Iola because we're the system center and we are the 800-pound gorilla or whatever Bob said. So we have staff, we have a collection. So we're able to fill some of the holds more efficiently than some of our large libraries. Now our large libraries are 1s, our medium libraries are 2s, and then our smaller ones are 3s and 4s. And we've calculated it based on their courier route in relation to each other, how many days their courier delivers and how many days they're open. Because I have some libraries that are, even though they get courier 3 days a week, they're only in the library 2 days a week. But it's still really flat. So it still has a degree of randomization, but it also gives us control over, we can influence it a little. We can put us at the top and then put the burden down on the larger libraries because they are going to have more staff in a larger collection to fill those holds. So again, just like Christopher was saying, this is since we've implemented it, we haven't had any complaints. So it has helped. We also have the whole shark and fish reciprocity situation going on for our new items, which works. We do have libraries that are still circulating items outside of the consortium. Like they'll get their new items in, they'll put a card in it, and then they'll circulate it locally before they add it to the catalog, which isn't allowed. But they do it anyways. We recently discovered that one of our libraries, some bad things happened there. She has a huge collection and half of it isn't cataloged. So she had just been putting cards in it and letting her own patrons have it. So we've got some cleanup to do and damage control to do there. But I know that I have other libraries doing similar things, and I don't know how to get that fixed.
I think some people that haven't been to one of these conferences before might need a shark and fish explanation.
All right, so what's the quick and dirty? So we want to make sure that it's fair for our libraries when they're sharing their new items. So we have a policy in place that allows them to either choose to be a shark, which lets them immediately share and borrow their new items, or a fish, which lets them delay the sharing of their new items outside their library for 6 weeks. So we encourage everyone to be sharks because that gets new items in everyone's hands faster. But we do have some libraries where either the librarian or the board has decided we want that shelf of new items sitting in our library. We want our patrons to have it first. So we've used the holds policies. We don't use the branch transfer limits like Bob does. So, but we have holds policies set up and then some extra jQuery set up. So, and some rude messaging basically. So if a patron tries to place a hold and they're a patron of a fish library, which means they're not sharing immediately on something that we're saying they're not allowed to have yet because it's new, they'll get a message in the OPAC that says your library doesn't share that. If you think this is an error, please contact your library, that sort of thing. And then we have some jQuery. It broke along the way. So things that fish libraries do manage to get put on hold for shark items do show up on the holds queue. So I've had to go through and just hide any of those requests on the holds queue so that we're not actually filling fish holds. And I have a presentation I did on this in Coeur d'Alene if you need to see it. But that's the long and the short of the sharks and the fishes. And
yeah, we had a similar situation where libraries were withholding stuff for their patrons for a long time, and we uncovered that. We found out, we just saw some weird things going on in the system. It's like, why are these things not going out? And we had this big discussion in our consortium, and we really had to get on the libraries about, what, we're sharing stuff. This is the policy of the consortium, to share these things, and we had to address that. But the thing that really helped alleviate that was when we adopted the local holds priority system setting. When they introduced that made a huge difference, and we also contributed to expanding the functionality of the local holds priority. But that made a huge difference, and it gave those little libraries that were trying to let their patrons, get the stuff that they've just added to the system, gave them a little bit more authority in there to do what they wanted to do, and not feel like they were just being stomped on by all the other libraries with their materials.
Yeah, and we have an informal policy that's basically that patron's in front of you, they picked it up off the shelf, give it to them. That's terrible customer service to say, sorry, that's got a hold, you can't have it. And we always maintain that the library that bought the book can check it out to one of their patrons first, even if there's not a hold, because a lot of my little libraries aren't putting holds on. But after that, if they're a shark, it has to go with the flow. Let Koha work. If they want it back, all they have to do is put a hold on it, because we do use local holds prioritization as well. And that did smooth things out. I think our biggest problem is the stuff happening outside of Koha that we can't really see, but we're pretty sure is happening. And that's more of an administrative thing. We need to have a policy beat down, I guess. We also don't have a regular participation agreement, which is something that we've started talking about. Just something that the librarian and their board has to acknowledge every year, saying, yes, we're part of a consortium, and that's what this means. It means that we have to share 95% of our stuff. We have to share our new items, that sort of thing. So we've coasted. We do coast. I don't like confronting people. I don't like being the policy police. But at the same time, I think we do need to add more structure in that department just to try and alleviate some of those issues.
I think one of the big leverages that we had in that argument and with that policy was, the fact that, hey, you know what, when you do this, outside of Koha, when you're not letting the system take care of this, you're wasting the time of many people trying to track down what's happening, because we can't tell what's happening. And, you're also, doing a disservice to the patrons, because, the system's telling them, oh, they're up next, or, they should be getting it soon, and they're withholding these things. So, causing that conflict, I see why they would do it for their own patrons, but when they do that within a consortium, they're affecting a lot of people, not just, one or two people.
Well, I'm very happy that we just only have fish, because it makes it really easy to not have any issues with somebody gaming the system, because everybody just uses those new items, and that's kind of the end of it. And then we use the automatic modification of items by age to make sure that those don't stay new forever. So that's kind of how we police that, but that's all automated. So like was said before, we can just kind of let Koha work and do its thing and keep it as simple as possible. Less avenues for people to try to cheat the system is good. But I mean, even as Jason was talking, I was like, well, we could probably do that, but then all that other stuff we would have to do to police it sounds like it could be more than I want to bite off. Okay, any other issues that are popping up in Consortia? Obviously, I think resource sharing is, kind of what makes a consortium. So that's a pretty big one. Do we want to talk a little bit about some upcoming features and bugs that are being fixed in 2011? Or yeah, is that where we're going? I can't remember. Yes.
There's something in the new update, and I don't remember the exact wording, about the finding duplicate patrons and having a pop-up for a warning for potential duplicate patrons. And that's something that we're kind of curious about as a consortium, because we don't require birth dates on our patron accounts. That's kind of a privacy thing, but the problem is we also don't want to have duplicate patron accounts. People can share their accounts between libraries. And so we're kind of right now having a discussion about, do we need to require the birth dates and things like that. The new feature coming could help with the duplicate patron problem, but we've got kind of a users group of a few of our librarians that we're meeting next week to talk about that. But I'm kind of curious if anyone's got a similar setup or anything.
Well, that would be a huge problem for us, because we don't share any patrons, because we're not regional enough that even though some libraries are within driving distance, some libraries are 7 hours away from each other. So we don't do that at all. But because there are some libraries that are kind of close, but have specifically said they do not want to share patron databases, you will have multiple cards in the system under the same name. And if that's popping up, that could be, that will cause issues for us. So that's good to keep an eye out. I'll keep an eye out for that one.
We do have patrons that live just a few miles away, and we have shared patrons. And the way we get around it is when they sign up and it pops up the message that you've got a duplicate patron, we ask for a middle initial, which then makes them unique to each library again. We're Vermont, so we're horribly independent from each other.
So it's a system preference, patron duplicate match and add fields. So you can select if you want any fields to match. Wait, can you see my? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Or if you want, I don't know if you clear all if it doesn't do any of them. Or if it, well, let's find out. I'm on the test server, who cares? Oh, didn't actually save that. Okay. So if I clear them and then go make a new test patron, I just made one to test this. So, and there was already one of them. I'm just filling out the required fields. Oh. And then it does let you say not a duplicate, I don't care. So I guess if you select nothing, that's interesting. I would have thought if you selected nothing, it wouldn't check.
Yeah, it shouldn't have matched on anything.
Maybe you found a bug.
Maybe I did. But I guess what you could do if you didn't want to use it was select all. And that would probably, you'd have to have it exactly the same, including the library card number.
Does it work that way, or is it like a any? Is it a must match all or must match any?
Yeah. It's must match all.
All right. As far as collect the information collected, we kind of leave that up to local policy still. So if my library isn't comfortable collecting a birth date, then we don't force that. We have very few required fields set up. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with it.
I know we're also going to be talking about the Kansas library catalog like you recently implemented. Do you require the birth dates for that so that you can authenticate?
No, so the 3M authentication is just using the card number. It's not using the birth date at all.
Okay.
So we all we need is the Kansas library card number for that.
Okay, thanks.
So one thing that's being added, which I think was relevant to the holds, is removing items from the holds queue after it's put in transit. And George had mentioned they have their randomized holds queue running every hour. We couldn't do that because people kept on pulling stuff, not getting it checked in. Then it would re-randomize, and then the next library would pull a bunch of stuff that was already in transit. So we're really looking, so we set it to 2 hours, but I think this development of having those items removed is going to really help us with that, with reducing that duplicate effort. So that's one thing that that we sponsored, but I'm very excited about finally seeing. I've got other ones that I thought were relevant. Group circulation by item type. I'm pretty excited about that. Obviously, in a consortial setting where everybody's doing custom things, the more you can do is more of a headache for an administrator, but certainly allows you to set things up. So I think that's going to allow less areas where libraries have to make a decision between giving patrons more than they want to give, just so they're not limiting them too much. So I haven't looked at all this is a very, I'm looking, I have the bug open now and there's a million things on it. So I haven't looked at all the implications, but I'm just starting to see how that will be helpful in organizing, making sure that like, if you only want so many visual medium DVDs, Blu-rays, those type of things out, that it's going to be limited in a much neater way than we currently have.
Yes, I'm very excited for that one too, because right now I've basically got duplication in those rules. So like they can have 5 DVDs and they can have 5 new DVDs. So this is going to let us say 5 DVDs, period. I was trying to find my notes from upgrade stuff. So though I think one of the only ones that we funded this coming is, and consortially related, is the addition of the transacting location, the checkout location on the fines page. So when you pull up a fine, you'll be able to see where that fine is actually owed, because we maintain that wherever the patron was standing when the checkout occurred is due that money. So there's a new column in the fines table, or the fines area, for that.
Another one I noticed that isn't necessarily just, well, it's consortial in that if you're doing a lot of resource sharing, this is important, and staff should be notified that a transfer has been completed upon check-in, because right now it's a little hard to train on that without that satisfying thing that when you check something in and it changes that status from in transit to available when it just says item not checked out. That is not the satisfying thing that I think people want to see, that will encourage them to continue to do the proper process. So I'm pretty excited about that one.
I am so excited about that one. Sorry, I just keep chiming in here. I'm going to actually have to update my training process, because that's like a big thing. That's like the number one thing that we have a problem with, is like we'll go out and train. We'll tell them that. Then we'll come back and we'll find that they're not checking things in that came in on the courier anymore, because the first one they checked in said not checked out. So then they're like, oh, I guess I don't have to do anything with that. So that confirmation is huge, and we've needed it for years. Sorry, Lizette.
Oh yeah, I always get asked that by new people that I'm training. Even, I'll tell them, I'll explain why it works that way. And then the first time that they do one, like once training is done, they always ask, which like, I'm always glad for people to ask questions if they're not sure what's going on. But I think that'll be a lot clearer for staff, especially like our substitutes who only work sometimes.
Another one I saw is a Elasticsearch specifically, but it makes it so the weights that you all set up are actually applied to advanced search, which because I think most people want to click that search button instead of searching in the in that bar at the top of Koha. So this will actually make searching more relevancy a lot improved, assuming you have your weights set up correctly.
Oh, can I sidetrack us? So
Yeah.
we're testing Elasticsearch right now, and on our test server, if I do a search for large print Patterson, I get nothing. Like, do I need to include the GMD and the description and stuff in my weights? Is that why I'm not getting results from those fields?
I think it's not the weights, but the, one sec, I'm trying to open the editor, the configuration. I think you have to, because you don't necessarily have to weight everything, but in the bibliographic records tab, which is like in the same editor, there's 3 tabs: search fields, records, authorities. You want to make sure, let's see, does that work? No.
Well, however we set it up, it works well for us. So
you just want to make sure that that field is in the mapping as searchable. that's where you would confirm that if there's something that's not
Okay.
coming up.
Yeah, that would make sense if it's not looking there, that's why you're not getting those results.
Is that one of the things that I have to have like a reindex after I make changes, or are those
Yes.
changes live? That is a reindex thing. Okay. Okay, I'll poke with that. I mean, we were planning on upgrading next week, but I think might not happen. I might have to delay it a little bit because I haven't poked all the knobs and stuff. Oh, bye, Michael.
Hi, Michael. I have some consortium things for the next update that I'm very excited about.
Yeah.
We're using, and I think according to every time I put in a ticket about this by water, we might be the only people using it. We're using the stock rotation feature that was added like a year and a half ago in Koha, that where you can like set up rotas. And actually I can like share my screen to kind of show what that looks like. It's like a tool, stock rotation. And then there's like, you can name the rota. Is it something that like continuously goes around? We're using it for new books right now. And it'll currently, it automatically puts them in transit, even if they're checked out or waiting on hold for somebody, or just sitting on your shelf. They're just in transit now, which is very annoying. But after the new update, it'll be requested for transit, and there's a new report built in that is transfers to send. Which will then say, okay, Beauville or Moscow, you have to send all these items to Beauville. And it'll tell you if it's on the shelf or checked out. But also I'll be able to write a report that'll work better because like we don't care if it's on loan. When it gets checked in, it'll route properly. So we've been using this for about a year for our new book rotation. We almost have all the old stuff on it. Actually, we might have it all caught up, but then our next step is we have AV rotation where we rotate CDs and audiobooks and DVDs and Blu-rays to our 6 branches in the consortium. And so we also want to set that all up to be cyclical and run automatically. And so then just like every week you run the report and see what needs to move. And the new books will move. There will be something every week on the new books unless we didn't order something or something didn't get in because everyone in tech was out sick, then we might not have anything for a couple weeks. But in theory, we should have at least a few books every week at every branch that needs to
write a report, or you could make a jQuery button so that it just hides the things that are checked out.
Yeah, that's true. So, or I could probably make it sort with the on-shelf stuff first.
Yeah.
So that's all at the top.
But if you're going to print this, it would be great if you could just hide the stuff that you don't want and then just print it off.
Yeah. I have so many tabs open right now, and it prints so nicely too. Check that out. All the way across, which currently reports don't do that. So.
There's a feature in the 2011 that's included that our consortium actually paid for. And I had talked about the feature of local holds priority. We added to that feature so that local holds priority allows exclusions. Right now it doesn't. And, there are a few libraries. The biggest example we have is we have a few libraries that do hotspots, and all of our smaller outlying libraries don't do that. So if any of their patrons sign up, put a hold on those, they generally don't get them because we have patrons that regularly check out or place holds on hotspots. And so, you know, if you're at one of the libraries that carries them, great. And if you're one of the outlying libraries, you'll never see them. And so we want to be able to share our hotspots. So this feature will allow us to exclude these particular items from the local holds priority, so that everybody in the consortium has a fair shot at them, not just our patrons.
Excellent. Well, I think we're probably at time, and I think there's another thing after us, so I don't want to dig too much into their time, but I'll put my email back in the chat. Please let me know if this scintillating discussion is what you want more of, and I will be happy to set up, find some meeting space in the Koha calendar that's not conflicting with anything else, and we can have these discussions again and learn from each other and talk about various issues, or just, you know, vent about libraries breaking our consortial rules, things like that, all the fun stuff. But I really appreciate the discussion and the questions and the bugs that we talked about. Good stuff.
I would agree. I came up with 2 or 3 things I jotted down that I'm going to do next week. Well, you know me, I want this to happen anyways, but I think that we've proven in the past hour that there's still a need for it. It's just a matter of finding the right time to get everyone together.
Yeah, maybe Jason and I will put our heads together and look at the calendar, and maybe in November we can find something to see what happens if we don't have all the attendees here joining us. But we'll give it another go. Yeah, I definitely get a lot out of these conversations, so I would love to have everybody that's interested come together and do this again.
All right. Thanks, Bob.